upstairs if I were you.
Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I knew this day would come. The day I would finally have to talk about this. I remember seeing this in a drive-in theater back in 2008 when I was 10 years old, and I remember thinking it was okay. But then as I got older, after rewatching it a few times, I was like, it has its moments, but it has so many problems. And upon my recent rewatch, I can certainly say that I don't hate Crystal Skull the way a lot of people do. I mean, there are moments of Crystal Skull that I like, but it does have a lot of problems, and I'll be discussing those in a second. But before I discuss my thoughts on Crystal Skull, I have my good friend Ryan Cam collaborating with me. Since we discussed the original trilogy last year, I figured we collaborate on this before I eventually check out the Dial of Destiny on Thursday. And I'm seriously hoping that that turns out to be good, despite the mixed reviews that I've been seeing lately. So I'm going to go in there with an open mind. So yeah, but before I discuss my thoughts on Crystal Skull, it's your go, Ryan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ryan Cam. I want to thank Brevin for having me back on his channel to talk about Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. You know what this movie is, and you probably have a very strong negative reaction to it. This movie is turning 15 years old this year. It's crazy to think about, but it is true. And this is one of those movies that I remember loving when I first saw it, and then hating it a little later on, and then kind of feeling like it was a mixed bag. And that's where I sit on this movie now. This movie is very much a mixed bag. It's got some actually quite good stuff, but the bad stuff, oh man, it pretty much like dominates the movie and tanks it completely. Cheap plug, I'm going to be having a review of this movie over on my channel dropping on Friday the 30th. So check that one out on my channel if you are so inclined. But I say this movie is a mixed bag, like I said, because the goods are good, but the bads are overwhelmingly bad. I want to talk about the goods first. I feel like there is enough juice in the lemon known as Harrison Ford that he does make the performance work. There is a problem with Indy in that I feel like he's a little too overpowered, nuking the fridge, that whole thing. But I think in general, there is some good stuff here. I feel like the movie is a bit bloated with certain storylines, and I'll talk more about that in a minute, but there is some genuine compassion from the character. You can kind of see that the years have been weighing on him. The movie does a good job of showing that without overstating it. The movie doesn't have a plot line where like he says something like, I'm too old for this shit. Like, no, that doesn't happen, and I'm grateful for that. Shia LaBeouf is a very controversial individual, let's just say. I never had a problem with Mutt Williams, though. Would he have made the next Indiana Jones? I honestly don't know, and I think at this point that train has long left the station. But I think in a bubble, it kind of works. Thinking about it, the signs are there that he is related to Indy in some way. Turns out he is his son. But I think that there was potential there, kind of seeing where the character went, but it looks like that may never happen. I will give credit, though, in the legacy of Indy sidekicks, he is not the worst one. He actually more than holds his own. He nearly holds his own in a sword fight against Spalko. He loses, but he ends up holding his own for a little bit. So I kind of am more lenient on him than others. It's always nice to see Karen Allen back as Marion Ravenwood. And then there is Cate Blanchett playing Dr. Elena Spalko. I honestly like this villain. Is she my favorite Indiana Jones villain? No, that is still Walter Donovan. But I really do like this performance here. And really, it's Cate Blanchett, so of course she's going to act really well. But I like this villain's notion of she just wants to know everything and possess all of the knowledge, when in reality that is nowhere near feasible, and it leads to her downfall, her brain-melting downfall. If you know, you know. My least favorite character, though, by a significant margin, is Max. I do not like this character. I don't like him because they flip-flop him too much. Is he someone who was a friend of Indy but turns on him? Or is he actually a double agent? I feel like the movie just didn't know. So the movie jokingly says, so you're a triple agent? And they just fop it off by saying, no, I just lied about being a double. I'm like, dude, go away. Now, in terms of negatives, like I said, the negatives of the movie pretty much overwhelm many positives. I still give the movie a positive rating, but very much a mid-tier positive rating because of these negatives. You know them, you hate them. I'm just going to put it under the Indiana Jones is invincible now bubble. Nuking the fridge, surviving army ants, surviving a tumble over a waterfall in a car. Yeah, that's BS right there. Mutt Williams flying around the jungle like he's Tarzan. The movie jumps the shark and does a 630 over the shark. And it's even worse considering the fact that in these movies, it is well established that Indiana Jones is a badass, but he is not invincible. He gets his ass kicked in Raiders of the Lost Ark. In Temple of Doom, he is forced to drink the blood of Kali and join the dark side for a little bit, not to mention survive bugs and spikes. And then in Last Crusade, he survives Nazis, of course, but he has to hang off the edge of a tank while dirt and rubble's being thrown on top of him, and he nearly is thrown off of a cliff. Not to mention the three challenges: the breath of God, the word of God, and the path of God. Here, it's like nothing affects him at all. Nukes, no problem. Army ants, typical sunny day. It's a disconnect. There is precisely one moment where you see, okay, Indy is still a human being, and it's when he is in Area 51. He's trying to get to the alien body parts in the truck. He uses the whip to swing. He misses the truck and lands in the cab of another truck. In one of my favorite moments of the movie where he looks to the guys in the truck and he's like, damn, I thought that was closer. It's a great line. But yeah, Indiana Jones just hit a Starman from a Super Mario Brothers game and just shakes everything off. John Hurt, bless him, but his presence in the movie, outside of servicing the need to get Indiana Jones looking for the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, I don't know what they were doing with this, making him like bewitched by the skull and like repeating the same things over and over again. I love John Hurt, rest in peace, but that was a very questionable decision. And then there's a decision at the end where the crystal skull turns out to be the skull of an alien. The aliens turn out to be alive, and when the skull is returned, it's a massive UFO that just beams off back to its home planet, quite literally. And the movie just tries to write it off as the treasure was knowledge instead of an actual treasure. That's lame. That's the only way I can describe it. It's just lame. Is it the worst twist ever? No, it's not. It's frustrating. It's just frustrating. I will say, though, despite my foibles with the movie, it is still fun in parts, and there is enough magic left from the Lucas and Spielberg dream team that it keeps me from writing off the movie entirely. I give it a good rating. It's watchable. It's painful at times, but it is watchable. It is the worst Indiana Jones movie by a significant margin. Dial of Destiny, the jury is still out on that one, but it's Kingdom of the Crystal Skull bringing up the rear for the time being. But thank you all so much for watching. I'm going to pass it back off to Brevin. Brevin, thank you so much. It's a privilege. Back to you.
The film takes place in 1957, and this is kind of like a tribute to 50s science fiction B movies, which I thought was a nice touch. While the original trilogy was like an acknowledgement to the 30s Old Republic serials, having this like be set in the 50s, I think was the right move for this era in the franchise. And of course, it's great to see Harrison Ford back as Indiana Jones after all these years. And for the most part, I do think that he's great in the film, despite his age and everything. he kicks ass throughout the film, but there are moments where he barely displays like any like vulnerability, and there are moments where some of the stuff that he goes through throughout the film, you're just like, how the fuck does he survive like all of this shit? And there's one moment in particular that I'll get to later in the second, but we're still in the opening of the film. Ray Winstone as Mac, I do not care about that character. I think he, for the most part, is just boring. I mean, there's nothing interesting or memorable about him. I mean, he's a friend of Indy who like betrays him throughout like most of the film because he's motivated entirely by money, which I'm just like, I can't get invested in a character like that because a character like that is just boring and just not really that interesting. And when it comes to Spalko, played by Cate Blanchett, I think for the most part, she's decent, I guess. I mean, is she memorable as Belloc? No. Is she memorable as Malaram? No. Donovan? Of course not. I mean, she's decent, really. But that's it. I mean, she's just decent. The scene with Indy and the Russians in Area 51 looking for this box that's. The contents in this are highly magnetic, so he uses gunpowder and shotgun shells to find the box. And the action sequence where he's like trying to escape from the Russians is pretty great for the most part. And I'm a little back and forth on the cameo that we get for the Ark of the Covenant. I mean, I get that it's like a brief moment of fan service. I mean, I'm pretty sure like most people who like saw this, they're like, "Oh, there's the Ark." So, yeah, I mean, it's a cool cameo, I guess. Okay, let's talk about the nuke the fridge moment because what else can I say about this that hasn't already been said? I mean, Indy getting into a lead-lined fridge, a nuke goes off, the fridge just like blasts like through the air and landing so hard on the ground multiple times, and he just gets out of the fridge with no broken bones, not a scratch, nothing, and I call bullshit on that. I'm just like, how? I mean, the nuclear bomb. I'm like, just okay, but the fridge just landing like that, like multiple times. I'm just like, Indy, I love you. I mean, I get that you survived crazy shit in the past, but you should be like bird shit in that fridge. I'm kind of torn with Mutt Williams, who's played by Shia LaBeouf, who is eventually revealed to be Indy's son. When he's first introduced, I mean, of course, we get the exposition scene about the crystal skull and Akator and everything like that, and then this leads to probably one of the better action sequences in the film, and with this motorcycle chase. Although the moment where the Russians' car decapitate the statue of Marcus Brody always bothered me because it just feels disrespectful, especially considering that Denholm Elliott, who played Marcus Brody, has long since passed away. Indy and Mutt go to Peru and they find the skull. And out of all the MacGuffins in these films, I mean, with the skull, I just don't really find it that interesting, to be honest. I mean, when you compare it to, like, the Ark of the Covenant from Raiders, the Shakar Stones from Temple, and the Holy Grail from the Last Crusade, just this crystal alien skull, I mean, I guess back then I thought what would have been a good idea, but I just didn't really find it that interesting, to be honest. Indy and Matt are, of course, captured by the Russians, and we meet Oxley, who's played by John Hurt, who's apparently lost his mind because of the skull. And that's when we're, of course, reintroduced to Karen Allen as Marion Ravenwood, which was just great to see, really. I do like the moment with Indy and Marion trapped in this dry sand pit, and this probably might be the most funniest scene in the film, where we get a callback to Indy's fear of snakes, and Mutt tries to save Indy with a rat snake, and Indy refuses to, like, grab onto the snake, and it's just like he's like, say grab the rope because yeah, I mean it may be corny for some people, but or a little cheesy, but it was all right for me.
Grab the snake!
Stop calling it that!
It's a snake. What do you want me to call it?
Say rope!
What?
Say grab the rope!
A large majority of the jungle scene just doesn't hold up that well, especially when you have the scene where Mutt is swinging on vines like he's fucking Tarzan. Just, I'm like, get the fuck out of here with that. Just, no. And the over-reliance on CG in this scene, many people have compared this to the over-reliance on blue screens and green screens with the Star Wars prequels. And I can kind of see why people would make that comparison, because, I mean, there's just an over-reliance on that in this scene. And I do like the Indy's fight with this big Russian dude, because, of course, he has to get in a fight with some big dude. And even though, I mean, it's pretty bare-knuckled, which I appreciate, it's not, I mean, it just doesn't feel like there's stakes compared to, like, what he's like gone through in the original trilogy. It's just like Indy's like basically an indestructible superhero in this film, and I just call bullshit on that, especially with the fridge and just a large majority of stuff that he goes through throughout the film. I mean, like nearly getting like cut in half. I mean, avoiding like this giant blade. I mean, after firing a rocket at the Russians, and almost getting crushed by a truck. Just, Indy's a superhero in this movie, and his fight with the Russian, I mean, it just comes too easy for him, because he just knocks the crap out of this motherfucker, and fire ants just like go inside this guy's mouth. I mean, which is probably the most gnarly death in this film, because this is a really tamed movie. The violence is really toned down. I think this is definitely the least violent Indiana Jones film, because before this film, Last Crusade was the least violent in this franchise. Even though I love The Last Crusade, I just hate that they played it too safe in Crystal Skull. Indy and company eventually get to Akator. They find like all of these like alien skeletons. Spalko, of course, follows them, and she places the skull on the alien skeleton. And this is where she's like wanting like all of their knowledge, which is their treasure. And as far as like Indiana Jones villains' deaths go, in terms of like their pursuit of the MacGuffin, and it eventually killing them in the end, with Belloc opening the Ark and him blowing up, Molaron falling to his death trying to catch one of the Sharkar stones, and Donovan drinking from the wrong grail. Spalko like being incinerated because of knowledge overload, because some CG alien glares at her. Just okay. Mac gets sucked into the portal. Big whoopity-doo. Who cares? And when Indy, Marion, Mutt, and Ox like being launched out of this geyser, and them witnessing this giant UFO like coming out of the ground and just vanishes like out of nowhere. Just, this is definitely the weakest third act of any Indiana Jones film. It's just, ugh. And the ending where Indy and Marion are getting married, I mean, it's a good ending. I mean, because Indy and Marion like have a chance to like get their happy ending and everything, but I'm pretty sure like most people were like, don't you put that hat on, don't you do that, when we see like Mutt like picking up like Indy's hat and about to like put it on, and of course Indy at the last minute just like takes it out of his hands and just puts it back on. I'm just like, whew. So yeah, this movie has its moments, but it has, like, a lot of problems. So, definitely disappointing, but I don't hate this movie. I mean, it has enjoyable moments. I mean, Harrison Ford is great. Spielberg, he's a great filmmaker. John Williams' score, I like it. But there's just so much about this that just doesn't work. And it just doesn't feel like the Indiana Jones films that we got in the 80s. It's a very disappointing film, and I doubt that I'll probably watch this again anytime soon. I'm going to give Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull a C-. So what did you think of this film? Let me know in the comments below. And guys, thank you so much as always for watching. I'm looking forward to eventually doing a video for Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny pretty soon. I'm seriously hoping that this turns out to be an improvement over Kingdom. Fingers crossed on that. And if you want my thoughts on old or new films, of course, you know where to find me.